Well, hello, everybody. I'm Franz Spohn, and we're here for part two, the Try It Box Dry Mediums Creative Studio by Faber-Castell. So just as a very quick review, last time we opened the box up and went through all the materials, and I gave some instruction as far as the qualities or the properties of each of the materials, and then suggested ways of techniques and things to use them. Today, we're going to actually do some images, and that way you can kind of see how these materials could actually be used in the process of creating your pieces, whatever it is that you want to make. So we'll move the box out of the way. And then if we can get to the overhead camera, we've got our paper here. We're all set to go. Now, word about the paper again. This is the foundation for your work, whether you're sketching, whether you're doing a complete finished drawing, whatever it is that you're doing. And as it being the foundation for your drawing, you want it to have a good weight, and you also want it to be a good surface. So I would avoid using paper like computer printout, jet print paper, things like that. Get a real art paper. And Michaels has a wide variety. You don't necessarily have to get the most expensive, but you want to get something that's substantial. And so that's going to really make a big difference on what you're doing. Okay, the first thing I thought we would explore, I've got a mannequin here, and we'll put a little view of it up so that you can also see what's going on. I'll turn mine around because the image that I see on my screen is opposite of that. So we'll try not to make it too confusing. Yeah, this is just the mannequin. I just thought I would use this because it's a figurative thing, but it is essentially more or less just basic shapes. And so we're going to use the pencils first. And as a quick review, if you look at your pencils, they have been branded and stamped to let you know what pencil they are. Because if you mix them together, you wouldn't really know, oh, well, what's the difference between these pencils? Well, we've got the HB, the 2B, the 4B, and the 6B, the HB being the hardest. And as we discussed last time, when they make the the leads inside the pencils, it's a combination of clay and graphite. So the higher proportion of clay to graphite makes a harder pencil. And so the HB is going to be harder than the 2B, the 4B, and of the lot, the 6B is the softest pencil. And you can use these different grades or the softness, the hardness of a pencil to your advantage. So the first thing I'm going to do with my figure, I'm going to kind of reorient mine a little bit to match the one that's on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to look at the vertical line that kind of represents the center of my shape. So first thing I'm going to do is, like, the head is kind of an oval shape. And so I'm going to just draw a really light straight line to kind of show the axis, the tilt of the head. Then it comes to the neck, and then the first body torso piece goes down a little bit. And then the other one kind of comes down here. And then from there, we go to where the knee is and the rest of the leg. And then the foot comes up like that. And then coming across about here, the top part of the torso, then I'm going to draw across here for the upper arm, the forearm, the hand, and then over here, this comes back this way, comes down that way, and then comes there. So I kind of have like oh, let's not forget this leg. And I can check things, like I can see where's the top of the foot, where's the toe of the foot here, and that seems about right. And they always make a joke of artists kind of holding a pencil up and then putting their thumb and looking over it and stuff, all cartoons and stuff. But it really is helpful, so that if I want to check myself, I can kind of close one eye, squint over it, and I'm going to put the tip of my pencil at the top of the head shape, and then I'm going to come back and then kind of see where that angle is and check what I've drawn and kind of correlate that what I have drawn is in proportion and according to plan here. Now, the next thing I do is suggest that perhaps you think if you take each of these shapes, you just cut through it, what would the cross section look like? And so then when you do that, like if you have a circle, all right, so this is what circle is. As that circle turns, as it rotates, it becomes an oval. And so you'll end up getting something like that. So here's your circle. If you look straight down at it, and if you think about maybe the top of a stool, so if you're looking straight down at the stool, you'll see a circle. But if you stand back and look at it at an angle, so you aren't looking straight down at it, you're going to start seeing this oval, and eventually, that it just disappears as a flat line if your eye is right at the level of the top of the stool. So when I'm looking at my figure here, then I can kind of think, all right, the head's tilted a little bit, and so I'm going to kind of draw a very light. Now I'm using my HB pencil because it's a harder pencil and I can draw lighter lines, and they'll be a lot easier to erase if I have to correct anything. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is kind of look down at the bottom about where the bottom of the head is, and it's going to be a smaller slice, and it looks something like that. The top is here. So then if I very lightly kind of start to sketch, and I go to the outer part of the ellipse there, and I come down here, and then I come around here, then that's going to be a pretty good facsimile of the shape that I want to use for my head. Okay, so then same thing's going to happen with the neck. Kind of has like a little joint there, so I'll kind of make that a little brighter. So then the top of the torso will be about like this. Again, I'll draw one of those ellipses, and then I'll come down, and then it kind of, as it comes down, I gotta correct something. I think this is a little bit closer to it. So down here, it's a little bit narrower. And then again, I can kind of combine those and go from one point of the top ellipse and come down in through here. Okay, next thing, we got the waist, about like that. And then I'll come down here, and there is, let's say the ellipse is about like that. And so it also kind of tapers a little bit. You come down around like that. So essentially what you're doing is you're finding reference points. It's almost like, I have an armature, or I have direction of lines to kind of show the way the body twists, but it's more like a stick figure. Then I'm thinking about each individual shape and how, if I sliced it kind of near the top, near the bottom, what would those cross section look like? Are they tilted this way? Are they tilted that way? And you can kind of sketch that in. And if you do something you don't like, if you're using an HB pencil, it's light enough that would be very easy to come through and just erase that, which is what we'll do in a bit anyhow. Okay, so now, as this is coming up in through here, let's start taking care of our other body parts or appendages, so that you've got like a little kind of, in my mannequin, wherever there are joints, then you've got these little kind of circles which connect everything together. So I'm going to just, kind of throw those in just to remind me of what's going to happen. All right, so they're pretty much even, but they do bulge out a little bit. So the center one is a little bit wider than the joints. And so then it's just pretty easy to come here like this and like that. This is the same way that this one is a little bit larger than this one, so that when it comes through, it's like the meat of your forearm. And then it kind of tapers to where your wrist is. And then you have the shape of the hand. And then we'll do the same thing over here. Now, what's nice about this too is like foreshortening is like if I put my arm out, let's see if I can, yeah, if I put it like that, you kind of get that. Well, let's do it with my hand. All right, you get the full length of my hand. But if I put it so that it's looking kind of projecting out towards you, it's kind of, you don't get the full length. And the way to kind of deal with the foreshortening is you kind of look at it and you think, okay, if let's say that I've got my wrist here and the hand is sticking out a little bit. And so then instead of just drawing the true length of that forearm or that part of the arm as if you're looking at it on straight, instead what I do is I get a reference point here and I think, okay, well, how does this line up over here? Again, if I have a little cross section, then when I draw that, I have the automatic foreshortening that you would get as things come out at you instead of having them be running straight across. So, then the hand would be here. Let's say it's sticking, it has a hand that is sticking up that's saying stop. So you have that there, and then the elbows here, and then so you don't have to guess at how you should be able to draw that in terms of the length of it because you've already established that this is starting point, that's a starting point. So automatically in that foreshortening, it's taken care of automatically. All right, so let's go back over here and get this one. So because this one is kind of going back into space as opposed to this one, which is kind of coming more straight across, even though these are the two, if I would actually take a ruler out and measure them, because this is going back into space, then as I draw it, if you would measure from there to there, it's going to be different than from there to there. And that, again, is that foreshortening, so that if you have something that is coming forward or receding, it's going to look like it's, a bit shortened there, therefore the name, foreshortening. And then this one is actually, I'm looking more straight at it. All right, and then here's the wrist, and then in this one, the hand is more like that. All right, let's get these legs. All right, well, I'm going to put the knee in there. The ankle's going to be a bit smaller. So again, I can just draw that. Let it swell out a little bit to accommodate the knee joint and the swelling of the calf. In this case, I'm seeing the back of the foot, and then it proceeds down. So it's like that. Over here, it's going to come into the joint. You can't see it, but I can draw it inside. And the same thing with this one. This one is more like if I go from here to there, that's like the pelvis, we'll call it. Bring this around here. All right, put the knee there, ankle here. So again, going from that circle to that one, this one, down to there, down to there, and then the foot is like that. Okay, so now I have sketched my figure according to looking to my mannequin, and the next job then is going to use one of my softer pencils to start putting some tones in it to make it look a little bit more rounded. All right, now the other thing that I suggest doing, and it's not really, because we have all the setups for doing the projection or doing it in this venue. If I'm doing this at home, I have a small little desk light or something, and I'll put a spotlight on it so that it's really obvious where the light is coming from. But again, in order to get the light onto my paper and all that kind of stuff, we have all these other lights, so we kind of negate that. But that way, it can show you the contrast between the highlights and the shadows and, some of the modeling and a shadow that will be down on the ground plane. So it just will enhance your drawing if you actually light it as you draw it. Okay, so now one thing I might do is either take my vinyl eraser, or you might have picked up a separate eraser, which is the kneaded eraser. And this one I can use just to kind of pick up some of the value. And I can kind of make those lines a little bit lighter so that they're not going to interfere with when I put the shading elements or the value. Now, when we talk about value, it isn't like, how much is this worth? It's value in the terms of what shade of gray, a light value or a dark value. Okay, so I can take my 2B, and I'm also going to take my vinyl eraser, and really, I'm going to get rid of some of those preliminary sketching lines. I want to leave a little bit of them in there because it helps give me a feeling for the volume. All right, and so what I'm going to do is look at my version here. Okay. All right, so I'll look at it, and if the light, let's say, is coming from this direction, then anything that would be facing it will have a tendency to be lighter, and anything as it wraps around is going to be darker. The top will have some highlights to it. So what I'm going to do, and again, I've suggested using these pencils, or any drawing pencil, generally hold it near the end, because that way you have a lot more control of how you lay the graphite down on the paper. And so I can make real subtle changes. With this one, it's slightly softer than the sketch one, so I could get a darker tone out of it. And what I do is have a tendency to work on just the general feeling for the overall difference between highlight and shadow. So I want to consistently, I'll look at my model there for some reference, but generally speaking, I know that the darker tones are going to be away from the light. And so very lightly, I'm putting in the value. And what I'm doing is kind of leaving the highlights. I'm leaving some of the paper white, because that's going to be, where the light is being reflected the strongest. And then as I wrap this around, it's going to be lighter as it comes toward where the front faces the light. The side of the hand will be darker. That'll be pretty much light. And so I'll be very consistent. And again, I'm just using very light pressure, the weight of the pencil itself. Now this is totally away from the light, and so there'll be just a little bit of a shadow here in the front as it wraps around. You'll get a little bit of light on the top of the calf there. And then this whole foot in through here is pretty much away from the light, so it's going to be dark. Okay, so now we got the beginning value. Now I want to come back and refine that even further. Now this is a 4B, and again, if you want to see the gradual, here is an HB. Here is the 2B, which I just used, so it's a little bit darker. Now I'm going to switch up to the 4B, and then I'll finish off with the 6B, which is the softest pencil. Okay. So now I'll look at it a little bit more closely, and I can see that it's a little bit darker here. especially as it comes around in through here. It's a little bit darker in a couple places at the top. A little bit of a highlight, a little bit of a reflection in a couple places. And the other reason I decided to do this mannequin is that, we've got a lot of territory to cover, so I don't want to spend like the entire workshop time on one graphite drawing. I just want to kind of give you the basic notion of how to use materials and actually doing a real image. Okay, so I can lighten that up a little bit. So I'm keeping the darker shadowed areas away from the light. And you can see that's starting to give it a little bit more of a form down and through here. Now I got just a little bit of reflection and through there. Okay, now the contrast, like if I start making this a little bit darker in through here, that's really going to pop that part of the arm off of the torso, which is, what I want to do. I want to kind of make it look like it has some kind of a volume. And now, last thing I'm going to do is come back and really start to tighten up a little bit on where the darkest areas are. And that will also help to bring out some of the highlights. And then I can lighten up on my pressure if I need to beef up some of those other values a little bit more. Now, in order to get that head to pop off a little bit more, I've got a very deep, dark shadow. Here. Okay, so I use the different softnesses and grades of the graphite associated with each pencil to do its job. So everything that needed to be kind of a lighter tone or for sketching, I use the HB pencil. And then as I needed to increase the value or the darkness of the shapes, then I went from 2B to 4B. And now I'm putting in the darkest shadows with this 6B. Okay, so that's just generally the way that you use the graphite to your advantage. And let me get this one done in through here. It looks like the top of the hand is away from the light, and then this part is facing it, so it's a bit lighter. But I think that you can kind of get the idea of how you use the pencil first to kind of sketch out the main form and the shapes, and then you can go back and start applying value to it. Now, if you want to, it's a paper stomp. This is really handy that if I want to get kind of a more even blending, then I can use this to kind of move some of those values around as well. So, and then you can use your eraser as a drawing tool. So if I decide that I really have a bright highlight here, I can come back and take very dramatic swaths of value away, and I'm drawing the highlights now by erasing the graphite. And if you want to do something a little more subtle, again, the kneaded erasers are very sticky, and so if you just want a couple real subtle things, I can just tap that against those areas, and I'm not really erasing, but I am lightening a little bit by picking up some of the deposit of the graphite. Okay, now by contrast, I thought then we would move to the pit pen. Now the pit pen has a fixed point to it, and it's an indie ink formulation so that when it dries, it becomes permanent. And so what I can do is, you can always start off again with your pencil, so that a lot of times you don't just have to use one pencil or one pastel or something like that. You can do a little mixing and matching, because this is really good for sketching. So I'm not going to go quite through the same routine, but I am going to just kind of put in some of the shapes to show you a way that you can use the Pitt pen in kind of a similar fashion as you do with the graphite. Okay, so I'm just going to very quickly, let's just do maybe kind of like the top half of the figure. Well, I'll sketch the whole thing in, but again, I don't want to use up all of our time with just one or two of the things. We've got pastels and color pencils to do as well. All right, so with the fixed pen, just simply means that if I draw a line, it's going to be pretty much the same thickness. Now, if I put a little extra pressure, it will expand a little bit, make it a little bit darker, a little bit thicker. But that's pretty much, kind of the effect that you can get with drawing the line. Now, I'm not going to outline this thing, but what I'm going to do is try to create form with cross-hatching. And that's when you use a series of parallel lines, and they don't have to be straight lines, they can be curved lines. And if you use an organic subject matter, then you're going to probably use more curved lines than straight lines. But the idea is, okay, your eye will blend that together as one value. And then if I go across that, it's going to start to look a little bit darker. And so the more that I do the hatching, the darker it'll get. So if I want to go from dark to light, then it's the concentration and the overlapping of a series of lines that are going to create the darker tones. And then with fewer lines, as I go out in this way, it's going to look lighter. Okay. And you want to follow the shape. So if I have like a rounded shape, I guess the best thing is, like, if you think about somebody wearing a flannel shirt, and if the shirt is laid out flat, and it has some kind of a tartan or some kind of a plaid pattern, then all the elements of that plaid are perpendicular to each other. But once you put an arm in that, it becomes more like a cylinder. And so these lines can go pretty much straight across, but instead of drawing straight lines here, I want to draw a curve, because that is descriptive of the shape that this is, so it'll flatten out and it'll look like, kind of geometric pattern. But if you really want to make it look more like, somebody's arm and hand would be in there, then you want to follow the curve. So I come in through here. This is also, as you can see by our graphite drawing. So what I'm going to do is just kind of start putting in a series of crosshatch lines. And then as I come down, I can kind of curve them that way. All right, then I can come back here, curve, do a little more. And again, it's like I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm making these marks on a rounded, sculpted shape. How can I do that the most effectively? And it's going to be with this cross hatching. And it'll be the head. Now, you can do things like these concentric circles. You don't have to be absolutely precise. Now, if you want to really look at cross-hatching in an extremely tight and controlled way, pull out a $1 bill and have a look at that. I mean, those are engravings. They have been cut into metal with burins. And so that when the plate is inked up, that cross hatching, that really meticulous, very exacting series of crosshatch lines will give you a portrait of George Washington. Okay. So in through here, like I have there, I want to make this my darkest tone. So now I just keep on layering and layering. Some people like to scribble, like, they could use just little squiggly lines. They don't have to be continuous parallel lines, but you just build up a density. And so the top head is going to pop out away from the torso because the torso now is going to be very dark at the top. And then this is going to be looking a little bit lighter as it comes over it. And so I haven't drawn, I haven't outlined that. But what I've done is I've created an edge by making this pretty solid and this less solid but textured. So it's going to have some form to it. Now the same thing is going to happen, with the forearm, the upper part of the arm. And to make the arm kind of detached a little bit from the torso, I can build up a darker value so that that creates an edge. And so forth. Again, you can do squiggles. You can do very precise parallel lines. You can do a combination of the two. But every time you add extra lines or an extra pattern of lines, it's going to get darker. And so then I can build up a sense of shadow and transition from shadowy dark areas to light highlighted areas. Okay, so that's one way of using the pen. You could also use this to sketch. If I decide that I'm going to draw like this eraser here, I could just use it very lightly. So if I just use very light pressure on it, I can get some light lines. And then I can sketch this. And so I have the basis of my eraser. Again, very sketchy, but I generally am doing a bunch of parallel vertical lines. And as I'm looking at it, the darkest area is right around here. So I can put some more lines in and taper off a little bit. Come back, do a little bit more, and then come back over and through here. Get a little bit of value there. And then overall, this side of the eraser is the darkest. And then, I'd have a shadow that I could put in here as well, and maybe put these in an opposite direction, but very close together so that it reads darker as a shadow. But as these lines hit that edge, again, I haven't done a real strong outline. It's just that there is a sense of a shape and a line and an edge formed because that's where all these lines originate from, come out. And there you go. Okay, so that is, we've done the graphite, a way of using it to get the value. You can use a pencil to sketch in for using another material. Let's get another blank piece of paper. And what I use these pens for more than anything else is I love, instead of using something like the mannequin or something else as a source, most of what I draw just kind of pops out of my head, all right? And so one of my favorite things to draw, if you've seen several of my zooms here, I love drawing animals, pigs in particular, or chickens, ducks, whatever. So what I'm going to do now is like I'm going to just out of my head kind of think about doing a pig. And I'd like the response of these pens because it will follow the energy and the way that I'm using my pen. I'm not going really slow. And like, one way that you could use them, obviously you could use a template or something. And if I use them in this way and do straight lines up against an edge, these are very static, strong lines, as opposed to line quality they get here, because even though this is a fixed point, if I go really fast and put a lot of energy in that stroke, it's darker here, it's darker, and then it starts to fade out as it comes around there. And I use these type of going from thick to thin, dark to slightly lighter for organic forms. So even though I'm outlining them, they still kind of feel like they're rounded. All right.
I'm going to note this as your 20-minute warning.
Okay. All right. Well, boy, we really got to get going here. I'm having too much fun. Okay. And so what I was going to suggest, though, then, okay, I usually put in a little cross hatching, kind of get the figure somewhat established before I go into it with my color pencils. So I'm going to do a little multimedia work with the color pencils. Okay, that looks good enough. So what I'll do is come back in and think, okay, light coming, let's say this way. Hey, and so these pencils are really soft. I mentioned before that with these pencils, they glue the leads in along the whole edge. So if you accidentally drop them and they break, you won't lose all the lead when you go to sharpen it. They stay sharp. And it's the more pressure you use, the darker they get. So if I want a little bit of light overall coloring for the pig, I use less pressure, and then to get more of a feeling for shadow or for the volume of it, then I'll use a little more pressure and build those up. And the thing that's really nice about these pencils is that you keep on layering and layering and layering. So I can come back in here and put maybe a little light application of the red on top of the orange. And so it'll start creating that volume that I like to try to get. And then in places that I think it ought to be even brighter, more intensely colored. So I'm using the application and the overlapping of the color pencil to help give my figure some form. And I can come back with the blue, and the blue on top of this will give it also more of a feeling for a shadow, dark little buildup. But you could come up with some really beautiful colors just by overlapping. So it doesn't have to be a solid one color thing. You can use this to give your work a little extra color, a little extra kind of intrigue with what you're doing and building it up. So still, your whole sense of this pig is that kind of orangish color. I can come back. But again, these are oil-based pigments and making up the leads of the pencil and not wax. And the problem with a wax-based color pencil, that at a certain point, you just can't add any more color down. But because these are oil-based, then you can keep on layering and layering and layering, and you can get some really beautiful color combinations. So I got yellow, I got the green. So what I recommend that you would do is just play with around with them and see what happens when you make little layers and stuff. But I particularly like using these color pencils in conjunction with the Pitt pens. Okay, now the last area that we have to go over is the pastels. And in this case, we'll get rid of our mannequin here. And what I have here is just, it's like a goofy foam curler that, you could use for your hair. But I love drawing these things because they're these goofy tubular shapes, and you can twist them, and it gives them they're a little bit animated. And I think we got a shot of this purple one to help you out. So these are the pastels. Okay, I'm gonna try to get mine so it's the same as yours. Well, that's a kind of like the mirror image. I don't know if I can do that. So I mean, you can tell what I'm going to be doing here. All right, now with these pastels, and grab black paper. There are a variety of ways. You have three basic ways of using them. If I turn them so that I can go on the corner, I can draw lines. All right, if I flip them and I use the short edge, I can get thicker lines, and they start to look a little bit like shapes. All right. And then if I want to really cover a large area, I can flip it and use the longer edge. And I can get a wider surface. So you can do line, you can do thick line or small shape, and you can get large shapes, or you can use this for the value. Now, in this case, I've got a purple pastel that comes close to matching that. And I'm going to do like the same thing that I did with the mannequin. I'm going to just with very little pressure, I'm going to say, okay, this edge goes up there. And again, the one that I'm looking at is going to be a mirror image of the one that you have on your screen. And I look to see the way that shape goes down. And then this one kind of comes across a bit and then comes around here. So then I'm going to sketch in very lightly kind of the end that I'm looking at. And in a similar fashion, I'm going to say, okay, here it's like that. So I can kind of combine those two. So I've got my one bit of the round thing. Now, when it comes up here, it's more pinched together. And so that I've got a line rather than a shape. So that's going to come across like that. And then as it comes up here, again, it's the same thing. This shape, I'm going to alter this a little bit. This shape is coming down here like that. And then it comes down into here. And up, that's got to come up there. That's going to come in there. So, sometimes you got to play with it to get it so it does. All right. Now, if I want, I can take my kneaded eraser. I can take my other eraser. I'm going to kind of change this a little bit. And that's what's nice about, if you use very light pressure, then you can change things to kind of suit what you have to do. All right, so you go across like that, down here, and I think that's a little closer to what we got. Now, remember, you're not drawing with a pencil. You're building up shapes. You're doing things with more of a surface area. And in keeping that in mind, then I'm going to take this and very lightly, I'm going to start curving my value into. All right, so I'm not drawing it flat. I'm drawing it more like that because this is a curved shape. And I'm using a light pressure because I like part of the texture of my paper coming through. And I'm working on dark paper because I like the magic of it. It has kind of more of an atmospheric look to it. Okay, so this is going to be darker because it's in shadow. So I'm going to take my finger, or you can take your stomp here. And so the blackness of the paper as it reads through where I put the pastel is going to make that look darker. So I'm not going to cover what I just did with a black pastel. I'm letting the black paper itself kind of come through. And then when I come through here and I start to apply much brighter and heavier layer of it, then as I start to blend it together, you can see where that starts looking like a shadow. And essentially, it's the black paper coming through a lighter application. And then, if you've smeared it so you don't have a nice sharp edge, come back with your eraser. With this, you can either use a brush or this is just a rag. Okay, so that's starting to get some volume to it. Now, if I want to do like a highlight on it, and I can say, okay, I can add a little bit of white, take my stomp, and get that to blend in with the purple. Okay, come back maybe and just okay, so you can see how now I'm starting to get, kind of a feeling for the roundness and the character of the tube. All right, now if I look at this end, I've got kind of like this white kind of button thing. So I'm going to put a bright highlight. And then to get the rest of it, because it's in shadow, I'm going to drag that down. And again, rely on the black paper to give me that gray. Now I do have, if you have a wider range of the pastels, you got all sorts of, specific gray colors and stuff like that. But this is a really good set to start with. So you can kind of see the way that by working a really heavy deposit of the white pastel into the paper, it starts giving you kind of a gray color. All right, and then I'm going to put a bit more of a highlight here. And then around like that. Okay, so that's going to kind of give it a rounded thing. Now the area around that is pretty dark, so I don't want to put too much in there. Maybe I'll put that. I found that when you use the paper stomp, it really thins the pigment out. So if you want the dark paper to really come in, this is one way that you can get it happen. I'll take my eraser. Okay, so that'll be the end of it. And then it's just a matter of coming back, and this part in through here is in shadow. So I'll keep that dark. This is much brighter up here at the top. And if I really want to make this end pop out, if I put a really bright, dense application, and again, as I apply it, I'm kind of going in a circular direction in order to kind of emphasize the tubing feeling for it. And I'm going to bring some of that down a little bit. And I kind of want to make a gradual change from this really bright area here and let it get darker as it comes. And, I just keep on trimming the edges up just to remind me of what actually is going to be the drawing and so forth, and what's going to be the background. Now, if I also had a really bright light on this, then I could start working with a shadow that would fall down here. Maybe I decide the background actually is going to be kind of like a light yellow or something like that, and then I could just leave one area really dark. Like I'll do that very quickly. So if I want to kind of make it look like this has a shadow, then in the foreground, I can put a little bit of this color. And then if the shadow, let's say, comes up to that, by making everything in the background kind of a light color of some sort, then this part of the paper is going to read as a shadow. Now, occasionally what I'll do is just to make it a little more interesting, I might come in through here and put some extra color. And what I try to do too is not have everything rubbed out. So if you have too much, smoothing it out, it's not going to be quite as effective as if you have some nice little strokes of some other color or even of the same color. You could layer these. So I like having the feeling that you've got the full stroke with a lot of pressure with a pastel, and then you could go into some areas that are smoothed out. But I think that if everything is too much consistently smooth, it looks a little bit overworked.
This is going to be your 5-minute
Okay,
warning.
5-minute warning. So let's see if I can kind of get this together and make it look a little more like something. But the idea is, okay, so here we go. Try to pull this all together here. That comes around like.
We do have a question on if these techniques are comparable if you're using oil pastels.
They're a little bit different. Oil pastel, it's funny, like when I first started using pastels, I was working on, seeing what is the difference between soft pastels and oil pastels. And I immediately thought that I would like the oil pastels better than the soft pastels, but I have actually, the opposite is true. I kind of like the soft pastels better than the oil pastels, but the oil pastels are a lot stiffer, and so that they don't quite blend together quite the same way. But you can use your paper stop to get that. And if you find that you really want to kind of blend them and they're maybe not doing it so well, even if you like, if you just kind of hit them a little bit with a hair dryer, that softens the viscosity of the oil in the pastel so that you can get some smoothing in. You can layer with the oil pastels the way you can the soft pastels. The soft pastels are much more susceptible to smearing and moving it around. The oil pastels, a lot of times you can build it up and you might be able to do more with a technique where you're really kind of getting in there very aggressively and making some marks. And then come back and start working some more color into it. So you can make surfaces that are made up of, some texture, full blast, the thickness of it, you can thin them out. You can also use like an X-Acto knife or something like that, and you can actually scrape layers of the oil pastel away. I think the soft pastels require a lighter touch. Again, there is a tendency to do a lot of this where you blend it together, then you blend it together, and then when you're finished, it's all just kind of the same surface and the same texture and everything. And I think that that isn't as interesting as getting, really high contrast, really bright areas like that. And then maybe I'll come through here and I'll get a couple of lines to come over and through here. You could soften them off a little bit. I can go on top of it with another pastel. I can get some of the blending by just physically layering on top of the other one, and you still have some marks and some textures and things like that. So when I do my pastels, I mean, the soft pastels that I do are very realistic looking, and it takes hours and hours and hours of adding a little bit, doing some. But you can also take the other example, or you could use the other technique where I guess this is one that I did a little bit earlier, that I still could be working on. Since it's a little bit more developed, then I'll kind of come through and let's say that I want to make it look like it's got some. If I come through like this, I can be much. Instead of trying to make everything look real smooth and stuff, I can come back in here and add some texture to it. And that maybe could blend some of it together. I could leave, even come back, get a little reflection from the background. If I don't like that, I can come back, I can pick it up with my eraser and then maybe come back and add color on top of it. A lot of it is just kind of playing around, doing a lot of experimentation. And then eventually, you'll come up with an idea of how to use them. You can do something that might be a little bit more elaborate. So it just depends on what you want to do and what style you want to take apart. I mean, I could do some of my characters just as well with these. Maybe another quick little pig or something like that. Again, this is kind of my illustration style when I'm doing kids' books and things like that. But in something like this, I don't have to blend things. I can just kind of go with this really nice direct approach. I like the way that warm and cool kind of go together there. So you don't always have to be worried about doing, oh, I have to do things to look like photographs. You can have as much fun as you want. That's the main thing. Explore things, see what your style is. You don't have to do it like anybody else. Just come through and experiment, have fun. So anyhow, I think that'll probably bring us close to the end. But yeah, I like the way that works. Just as much as I do if I were, putting together something that is realistic. So lots of stuff you can do. You could do something that's very energetic, uncompromised. We can even, I don't know. So this is much more kind of accustomed to the way that I usually work all the time anyhow. But, you do have the capabilities of doing something highly realistic all the way to doing something that is maybe a little more whimsical and out of your head like this. Okay, any last questions? I know that we are just about at 2 o'clock. If you anything else?
Nope, but I know people are looking forward to rewatching the class.
Yeah. Well, it really is a lot of fun. I mean, I think that sometimes I get so intense with trying to make sure I cover all these different techniques and stuff, but the main thing is just have fun with it, you don't have to draw like anybody else. You can make up your own way of approaching things. Like, I'm thinking, well, what would have me put kind of a really bright, be helpful if I had one piece of paper there. But anyhow, you can see lots of things that you could do. And these are the best materials to start off with because they're really high quality and they will assist you in your exploration. So I hope that you have a chance to use them and come up with some things that you find inspiring. And thank you for joining me today.